Chapter 11. Church time, church time. Little Mike ran from door to door with the announcement, "Church time, be boss. Church time, town man. Church time, farm boss." The commune bell was never permitted to disturb the Sabbath silence. Sunday milking and Sunday meals were answered by force of habit at their proper hours. But the call to worship was heralded by a youthful crier whom the pastor appointed. His was the special dispensation to open the doors and summon the faithful to the house of God. On this sun-bright September morning, this honor was little Mike's, church-time householder. He ran quickly from the home of the householder to the next humble house nearby. He opened the door. "Church time," he called. Then he stood chagrined in the sudden realization that he had mistakenly rushed in on Pastor Kunz. He clung to the doorknob. "Has the whole commune gone mad?" the pastor demanded. "Last night nobody slept, and now you think you must wake the pastor so he can hear his own sermon. What is it with you, Mike Newman?" "I didn't think, Pastor Kunz." "That is why they put rings in a bull's nose," said the pastor. He raised a warning finger. "I have my eye on you, little Mike, and on all of you boys. Don't think that just because Robert Faulkner comes here with big ideas, that you are at liberty to do things without thinking." Selma Kunz put on a freshly laundered dark red apron over her black dress. Pulling the band tightly against her body, she observed, "It's the wedding excitement that does it, Jacob. It's boyish foolishness," grumbled the pastor. Mike turned to go. "Let me look at you," said Selma Kunz, restraining him with a lenient voice. "Let me see how the laundry boss did your nice white Sunday shirt." Little Mike turned to her for inspection as she shuffled over uncertainly without her cane. "Your face shines like a saucer," Selma observed affectionately, and smoothed his hair back with her hand. "The shirt is good. Look, Jacob, this was made out of sugar sacks, bleached white with that new something the town man brought. Lye water and sunshine have always been good enough for any bleaching," mumbled the pastor. "This is handier," she had to say. "All you do is open the bottle, pour a little in the rinse water, and—" "All right," agreed the pastor petulantly, slipping an arm into his black vest. "It is a good shirt, so let it be. It's as nice as the one that Joshua Faulkner wears," Selma murmured. "Good needs no comparison," argued the pastor. "Good is good, and let that stand." He turned quizzically to her, drawing little Mike into his observation. "It seems to me," he said suspiciously, "that the talk of late goes altogether too much to Joshua Faulkner. And what is Joshua Faulkner trying to do? He wants to keep us from getting the Jordan Ranch as a home for his own father and mother. That's his trick, and very likely he will drive a hard bargain now that he has outsmarted us. Can't the new colony come, Pastor Kunz?" little Mike ventured, "if Joshua Faulkner will not sell the Jordan Ranch?" "Where would they go? Land is no longer plentiful, and we need big tracts. We need buildings and fields. Room to live is what we need. A worse thing he could not have done." Compare yourself to the Volkners if you want to, but for me, I will live so that the Volkners will compare themselves to me. First, you want to compare your shirt to his. Next, you will want to wear a necktie. Not me, Pastor, little Mike assured. That would choke me. Even to wear shoes, as I'm doing today, is more hurtful than going barefoot. You just wear shoes today, little Mike. Today is something special, said Selma Kunz, in a motherly tone. But if you wore stockings, the shoes would feel better. Well, you look good. Your pants are nice, and your shirt is nice. And the curtains in the schoolhouse are nice, and the wedding will be nice, mocked the pastor. Brush off my hat for me, so I can be on my way to church. It is all brushed and ready, Jacob, Selma told him as she went to get the hat for him from its peg on the wall. It is in good Sunday condition, she observed. Even Joshua Volkner's is not made of better material. Deliver us, blessed Lord, groaned the pastor, from the vanity of women. He snatched the hat disgustedly from Selma's hand. Then he looked at it. This hat, he said appraisingly, is better than new, and it is 20 years old at least. He put it on. Little Mike and Selma looked at him admiringly. He squinted at them. Go on with you, he commanded, shooting them away. Get behind me, you two Satans. But his eyes were twinkling, and little Mike ran happily from the room. The world was bright. Though his work of announcing was done, he wanted to go through the yard calling church time, to the barns and cattle, in the reassuring knowledge that the pastor was not without gentleness. He almost forgot about his lost possession, but starting in the direction of the schoolhouse, he found that he could not cross the path which led to the high bank without searching the ground. A light rain during the night had washed the path clean. He walked to where the grass began, and then turned to gauge the time he could spend before the service started. Pastor Kunz, who was always among the first to take his place at church time, was just going into the school. The householder came from his home. His wife followed behind him, and then came their 5 children in single file. Martha Volkner emerged from the Daniel Mueller quarters, with children swarming around her. Silently she stood looking at the commune, as a new day revealed it to her. In these half-remembered surroundings, she seemed to feel the pulse of her old home beat in her heart on this holy morning. From the colony dwellings, the worshippers now came and filled the yard. The men walked slower and more thoughtfully than on weekdays. Their black pants were pressed, their hook-and-eye jackets clean. The sunlight touched their white, tieless shirts. Little Mike watched the men and found in each of them the same searchless expression of security and somber faith. Their minds and their ways were established. The women came singly, their long skirts almost sweeping the ground, their colorful Sabbath aprons brightening the surroundings. The Sunday headscarves were especially tidy and smooth, and little Mike remembered that in each of these the woman's name was neatly cross-stitched with colored thread. The Sabbath quiet sobered the people's steps as they moved solemnly to the schoolhouse. Very young children in long dresses and little pink caps clung anxiously to the hands of older sisters, who led them carefully through the yard. With a lingering glance in the direction of the Newman home, David Weiss made his way across the yard. Michael Newman caught up with him, and together they walked to the worship. Joshua Volkner came from the teacherage. Joshua, in his handsome dark suit and colorful necktie against the gleaming white shirt. For a moment he stood at the doorway, surveying the commune. Then he held open the door for his daughter. Elaine came out pulling on a pink glove that just matched the flowers in her hat. She took hold of Joshua's hand, and as they started across the yard, Robert came out of the teacherage, winding his wrist watch. Together the three started to the service, talking animatedly without regard for rules. In them, the outside world came to life. And little Mike dared to imagine himself dressed in Robert's clothes. For a moment he was wearing the brown suit with long pants, the soft brown shoes and stockings, and the colored bow tie, which seemed not to choke him at all. Little Mike, with a wristwatch on his arm and his hair wet with something fragrant, walking carefree to church. He imagined himself sauntering boldly down the center aisle, and pictured in his mind the blue-covered heads turning, bearded faces looking up, and the boys gaping at him with excited whispers. "Look at Mike. He's been in the world." A gold chain on his leather belt, a necktie. "Hey, what time is it by your watch, Mike?" Straight down the aisle the way he always went. "All right, Pastor Kunz. Look at me," he would say. "I went out into the world, to Chicago, to New York, to California. I was on a train. I went to the theater. I was on a Ferris wheel. I was on streets where there were many people. There I had money, and I bought all the pretty things I wanted. The world was bright with music, and I was free." Reflectively he stood in the dirt path. Joshua Volkner and his children had gone into the schoolhouse. Everyone had disappeared. He was alone. Before him lay the uninhabited yard. There the gate, and beyond that the tempting road rose like a mighty angel sang, "Come, little Mike, come." He took a step. Nothing stopped him. No voice sounded to hold him back. Freedom was beckoning. All that Robert Volkner had, he too could have. He would still have had his harmonica, had it not been for the fear of personal possession. The elders were to blame. The rules and regulations which they had made were the cause of his sorrow. He had tried to guard the instrument too well. Gradually he placed the full blame for his suffering on the unyielding confinement of commune life. He began to run, past the sheds, past the barn, past the carpenter shop, and the separator house, out into the clearing of the commune road. The gate is never locked. It opens easily. Nothing confines you, Mike, only the rules. These thoughts were wrung from his heart as he threw off the chain from the gate. The chain clanked loudly. He pushed the gate open and stepped out. The world's road lay free and calling before his eyes. He felt the gate close. He heard the sharp click of the iron latch. "Mike!" The word stabbed through his thoughts. Tremblingly he turns. Sarah Mother was running toward him. She stopped when he swung around. "Mike, what are you doing? Why are you outside the gate? Come back here and hurry, quick now." Rachel dressed for the wedding, hastened to her mother's side. "Please hurry, Sarah Mother," she pleaded. "Come, Mike, come. We are all late already." Sarah was at the gate and opened it. "You know you shouldn't be out there," she told him in an almost tender tone. He came in, and she hurriedly flung the chain around the gate post. What was he doing out there, Sarah Mother? "Doing," Sarah said, "busy with the gate. Telling the world it is church time, I suppose. Listen, there is the first song. Didn't I tell you the pastor wouldn't wait? Get in there, Mike, so you are in your place before Rachel comes." He turned submissively, and the three went quickly to the schoolyard. As the compelling strains of the singing called Mike back to church time and his world, he was possessed by one vivid impression. There was a touch of kindly understanding in his mother's voice, which he had never heard before. He went up the schoolhouse steps, brushed back his hair, and opened the door. Down the length of the long aisle he started to go. The pastor was setting the tone for a line of the song as he stood behind the table, book in hand. But when the late comer entered, Pastor Kunz did not refer to the hymnal. He sang from memory, and his unflinching gaze followed little Mike every step of the way. 4 elders were in their places, at the pastor's right and 3 at his left. They sat on low backless benches, feet squarely on the scrubbed pine floor, beards neatly combed, their eyes on little Mike, as if they were already preparing a pronouncement of eternal judgment. They sang the song with spirit. It was the song of the wretched plight of those who succumb to the Weltgeist. Little Mike walked the length of eternity down the center aisle. At his left sat the colony men, and Joshua Volkner and Robert. At his right were the colony women, and Grandmother Volkner, and Elaine. In each section the worshippers sat shoulder to shoulder in the crowded room, hands folded on the school desks, their eyes following him all the way. In the first 3 rows at his right sat the younger girls. At his left the boys were packed solidly in their places, the youngest in the very first seats, and those his own age just behind them. All of these places were taken, and he had to go all the way to the very front and then walk to his left, where a bench had been put against the side wall. Here Jake Linder had reserved a place for him. Here was sanctuary. He dropped awkwardly into the seat just as the song ended, and an expectant hush fell over the room. Rachel and Sarah Mother now came down the center aisle and took their places in the women's section. The somber faces of the elders relaxed. The pastor stroked his beard. Rachel glanced nervously across the aisle to where David sat, relieved that he was being forgotten. Little Mike settled back against the wall. Pastor Kunz rose gravely to his feet. Slowly he paged through the hymnal, held it close to his eyes, and began intoning the wedding song line by line. "It is not good to be alone. Vouchsafe these words, O God of grace." The congregation repeated each line, copying the Ensager's doleful mood, together with the melody. "Bless thou, and seal the marriage vows, which shall be offered in this holy place." The schoolroom throbbed with the antiphonal singing. The women's high-pitched, fervent voices mingled with the deep, resonant chanting of the men. Little Mike and Jake and all of the children joined in, taking their cues and their words from the leader. It is not good to be alone. The heart's desire begs admittance to another's love. He imagined himself playing the song on the harmonica, bringing to Rachel's wedding the sweet sound of an organ. But as he thought of it, he brought only sorrow and longing to himself, and instinctively he looked for Sarah Mother in the crowd, wondering what she was thinking, and as she sang. Would she tell Michael Father that he ventured outside the gate? Would she report him to the elders? Share with the loved one peace and pain, send forth together holy thoughts from earth to heaven above. At the end of 4 verses, Pastor Kunz laid the hymnal aside and picked up the Bible. The room was very still as he said, "The Apostle Paul instructs us how a husband and wife shall live together according to the will of God. In the 5th chapter of Ephesians, he writes, 'Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands, as unto the Lord.'" During the tedious reading, Jake whispered cautiously, "Did you find it, Mike?" Mike shook his head. "I thought when you were late," Jake ventured, "maybe you were looking for it." "No, I wasn't." "Look at Robert Faulkner's wristwatch. I can see it plain." Mike shrugged. His mind was straying. Why was he not more frightened at what Michael Father would say when his mother told him the reason for their tardiness? What if his mother had not come when he stood outside the gate? Why then he would have been able to own things without fear. He could have walked through the world playing a harmonica as much as he pleased. No colony boss would tell him how he should dress, or how he should act, or what he should memorize, or how and when he ought to pray, just as no one dared tell Joshua Volkner that he had to do this or do that. Tremulously, the pastor finished his reading. "For this cause shall a man leave his father and mother." He closed the Bible and put it aside, with a respectful sigh. Then he folded his hands and began to preach in a sing-song tone. Today, when the union of 2 young people blends into the tradition of our faith, I want to remind you of the glory of our way of life, and I want to warn you of the Weltgeist, the ever-dreaded spirit of the world. The pastor's accusing glance passed over the listeners as if to assure himself that Joshua Volkner was in range of his words. He closed his eyes. "Here we have a life that is beautiful and free," he chanted in deep earnestness. "We are safe and protected from temptation and harm." But his voice filled with ominous warning. Outside the commune is the everlasting ambush of the Prince of Darkness. His legions increase. He grows desperate with his lust for conquest. He refuses to rest while there is a remnant which still serves the one true God. We are that remnant. Pastor Kunz pressed his hands tightly against his breast. His body swayed slowly from side to side. It is the Weltgeist that says, "Come into the world and surround yourself with personal possessions." Come out where there are no rules or boundaries or restrictions. Come and satisfy your sensual appetites and desires. Come and forget about God. He opened his eyes and pointed a finger at Rachel and then at David. "And what does the Weltgeist say to you? Come into the world. where divorce is not forbidden, and where the vows of marriage are a mockery. Little Mike sat engrossed as the swaying figure continued. He had heard the pastor preach many times. Each night when he sat in the service, he waited restlessly for the final Amen. But now for once he hoped that the sermon would not end. It was calling to him as his mother had called, and though he resented it, he again found himself obeying. The unsteady sense of standing outside the commune boundary, the daring of starting up the road that led to the world were receding. For the first time in his compulsory church-going, he was trying to understand what the speaker said. He did not comprehend it all, but the tone of lament with which the pastor exhorted his people left no doubt as to the rightness of the Hutterian cause. As the pastor argued, little Mike continued to yield. Phrase by phrase, he was wooed back through the gate and up the commune path. The pastor gestured with outstretched arms. The furrows of his bearded face deepened as he pleaded for commune loyalty. His voice broke with passionate entreaty. Do not be misled by the monster Weltgeist, the great deceiver. He lies in wait, ready to enslave you, but here you are safe and free. Now the pastor nodded to the elders, and they rose to their feet. David Weiss, Rachel Newman, Pastor Kunz announced, "You will come and stand before the congregation." Rachel was pretty. She wore a blouse that was soft and pink. The blue apron over her long, full skirt matched the blue of her head scarf. She carried no flowers. Michael Father had said, if she has flowers at her wedding, everyone who gets married should have them. Roses, for which you must pay a price, are already tainted with the world. David looked very young. His hair was freshly cut, straight around his head, and his black suit fitted him nicely. His cheeks were crimson, and he smiled at the elders, who responded with a gentle light in their eyes. They seemed almost to smile as Rachel and David stepped in front of Pastor Kunz. Rachel nervously smoothed her dress. David stood with his hands properly at his sides, his face lifted to the pastor. "I ask you, my brother," the pastor charged, "do you accept this woman willingly and readily as a gift of God?" "I do." "Are you willing to lead her in all that is right and good, that she may be led closer to the Lord by you?" "I am willing." Little Mike could not imagine himself in such a ceremony, but when the pastor reached the momentous question known as the special dedication, he suddenly became an interested participant. "I ask you, David Weiss," the pastor continued searchingly, "if it should ever come to pass that you should abandon the church and this community and be enticed by the spirit of the world, will you let it be enough that this happens to you and not desire or ask your wife to follow you?" "It will be enough that I should go," said David. Little Mike turned his eyes in Joshua's direction. What was the worldling thinking as he heard this? How did he feel as he sat in the congregation, knowing that he had departed from the true faith? Joshua rested his chin on his hand, his eyes wise and watchful. Robert sat at his side with arms resting casually on the desk. "Should you ever embark on this terrible and unexpected undertaking, probed the pastor. "Do you promise not to trouble us before the magistrates to induce them to have your wife come to you?" David's voice was resolute. "I so promise." The pastor turned to Rachel. "Are you ready to accept this man as your husband, willingly and without complaint?" Rachel said softly, "I am." Little Mike suddenly wondered what the Newman home would be like with her away. Only now did he realize that the closely knit family to which he belonged was being disrupted. Rachel would be gone. True, she would live only 3 houses from him. He would see her every day almost as much as he always had, but a feeling of loneliness touched him. "Since it is ordained by God that the husband shall be the head of the wife, are you willing to obey him in all things, righteous and godly?" "I am willing." Michael father sat with his arms folded over his black hook-and-eye coat. He looked proud and pleased. Sarah mother watched the ceremony solemnly. "The husband is usually healthier than the wife," quoted the pastor. "But if sickness does come to him, will you serve him as well as in health, in sorrow as in love, never to part or leave him until the Lord severs you by death?" "I promise." "Then," said the pastor, "give each other the right hand and kneel before me." As the couple knelt, the elders and all the worshippers went to their knees. For once little Mike did not close his eyes, as was the custom. He watched intently while Pastor Kunz laid his hands on the heads of the couple and said, "I bear witness that you are now married as pious people, according to the ordinance of the Lord and the example of the fathers. May the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob bless you, and may you live together peaceably and well throughout your life. This I desire from God through Jesus Christ. Amen." The worshippers returned to their seats. David Weiss took his place among the men, and Rachel walked back to sit once more among the women. The pastor spoke a closing prayer, and the service ended. Out in the schoolyard, close by the commune road, Rachel and David received the congratulations of the people. Little Mike tarried in the crowd. He heard the oft-repeated, "Well, Rachel Weiss, God bless you in your new home," while the men wished David good luck and a good family. But as he passed the Vulcaners, he caught Elaine's anxious whisper to Joshua, "Why didn't she carry the roses? Don't they even kiss each other? Shouldn't there have been a wedding march? Won't they go on a honeymoon?" Little Mike walked away, feeling an unanswerable sadness. It was the loss of the harmonica, of course, but it was something more. He felt tied, like the pet lamb was tied each Sabbath so that it would not roam wantonly through the yard. He felt cooped up like the geese, who were reminded it was Sunday by being kept inside the goose yard. It was always Sunday with him. He was always caught by rules, by discipline, by fear. He walked once around the Newman house, and then decided to go in. He went into the children's bedroom, closed the door, and flung himself on the big bed, where Rachel used to sleep. Rachel had seemed very happy as she stood with David in the yard. Apparently she was undisturbed by whatever it was that caused Elaine Volkner concern about such unheard-of things as a wedding march, a honeymoon, Rachel was as happy as if she had a personal possession, yet she would never understand if he went to her and said, "Help me find my possession." "What is the matter with you, Mike?" she would say in a voice that was already the voice of Sarah Mother. "You know what Pastor Kunz said in his sermon, and what were you doing outside the gate? You just better be good." He tried to figure out what life in the world was like. If a boy worked hard, he earned money. Then he could buy the things that brought him happiness. But what happened if one boy made more money than another, or had prettier things? That was hard to figure out. As he lay on the bed thinking about it, he said to himself, "If I only had my harmonica, I wouldn't care if every boy had one, even if theirs were nicer than mine, or even if they could play theirs better. I would not care." He heard the opening of the outside door, and recognized his mother's hurried steps. She went into the other side door, opened again, and Sarah Mother returned to the front room. He heard her speak in a matter-of-fact voice. "Well, Joshua, did you come to ask why Rachel did not carry the roses? Even if she didn't, it was nice of you. Nice, but too much in the way of the world. There they are in the fruit jar on the table. They must have cost a pretty price." "That's more talk than I've heard from you, Sarah, in all the time I've been here." "Oh, you haven't been here so long. We're leaving soon after dinner." "But not Mother Volkner. She stays a while." "Yes, I hear that everyone is begging her to stay. Would it do any good to beg you?" Sarah wanted to know. "Of course not. Your world is not ours, and ours is not yours. That anybody can see. So why waste time with it? Tell me, Sarah, did you ever regret that my world, as you call it, did not become your world too? You better go to dinner." "Did you? 20 years ago seems like another life to me," Sarah told him, and little Mike heard her move about as if she were busying herself with duties in the room. "We were two different people in those days, Joshua, so why talk about that? I wanted to ask you how you felt about it, Sarah. And I'm glad you've told me. So, you never regretted that you didn't run away with me as I wanted you to do." Sarah's voice was a tone of dismal. "I never think about things like that." "Never?" Joshua asked. "What good does it do?" "Sometimes a person can't help it. Sometimes it helps one to figure out how life works." "That I don't understand," Sarah said shortly. Then she sighed. "Look at this room. To clean it up will take all day. Colony life makes easy housekeeping, they say. The elders should look at this." "But Sarah, this is a special day." "Oh, it's not so special. This time it's Rachel. Next it will be Ruth, then little Mike, then Anna, then— that is, if we assume they will all stay and be good Hutterians. That is, if they never walk outside the commune boundaries. Oh, Joshua, you want to make out that we are prisoners. We are freer than you. Everybody knows that. Come, ride to Yankton with me. Come visit us in Chicago. Come, let us sit together at dinner. Rachel may carry the roses. Little Mike can go with Robert to a movie. Let me give you and Michael a radio so that you can listen to music. Wear a dress to make you as lovely as you really are. Go and buy yourself what you like. Free? No, Sarah, you are no freer than you were the day that I begged you to leave." "I didn't want to leave." "Yes, you did. We were in love, terribly in love. You didn't love me enough to stay. I didn't love you enough to go." Ah, such talk is foolishness. 20 years go to dinner. I loved you too much to want you to stay here and be put into the Hutterian mold. Let's put it that way. You wanted to go, but you were afraid. To save yourself, you flew to Michael. I love Michael. You flew to him for protection from the greatest desire of your heart. Forgive me, Sarah, but haven't you ever wished? Who knows what a person wishes? Sarah interrupted impatiently. Wish for nothing that you cannot have, and all your wishes will come true. For at least 2 years I never stopped thinking of you, Sarah. Often I almost came back because of you. I suppose we were different from most Utarians. We loved each other, but not as a matter of convenience. We wanted to marry because it would bring us happiness. We were different. You were different, Sarah. For a long moment no one spoke. Little Mike lay on the bed, his heart pounding at Joshua's words. He heard his mother ask quietly, "What is she like, Joshua, the woman you married? Would you like to see a picture of her?" Then in a moment he said, "This was taken just this spring." Sarah was silent for some time. "She's young," she said. "She's pretty. She looks like Elaine." "What is her name?" "Helen." "How were you married? In a church?" "No, in the garden of her father's home." "Did you give her a ring?" "An engagement ring, too." "Yes." "How did you meet her, Joshua? How did everything happen to me out in the world? Not by arrangement, as in the commune, but by chance. A tourist picked me up on the highway the night I left here. He was going far, he said, to Chicago. I went with him. By chance I got a job. Or was it by some divine direction? Who is to say? One day I told my employer the story. The next Saturday he took me home with him. He had a daughter. We saw each other off and on for nearly 3 years. I suppose she is rich. Yes, I can see from the picture she looks well-to-do. Her people were rich at one time, but we had some bad years. Things were not always easy. We had a great deal of sickness, too. Why didn't you bring her with you? You wouldn't believe it from the picture, but she doesn't get around too easily. She must walk with crutches, and has ever since she was a young girl. You see, there she is standing near the car, and it is sort of make-believe that there is nothing wrong. And that is why she didn't come. Yes, that is why." Little Mike listened. The voices of people in the commune yard were far away. It was very quiet in the front room, but that quiet was near and real. Then his mother spoke gently. "I'm glad you came, Joshua. It was good to see you, and I'm happy that you talked to me. We have chosen our lives in our respective worlds," Joshua added. "But Sarah, give your children a chance if you can. Give them a chance to go out and make something of their lives. Let them see what the world is like. Should any one of them ever want to go, let me know and let me help, for a change is coming to the commune life, sure as can be. The time is not far off when the young people will insist on getting out, and they'll have the courage to go. No fences will hold them, no elders, no rules, no fears. Spare me from that day," Sarah exclaimed. "Oh, now, Sarah, the world is not as bad as Pastor Kunz has painted it. Spare me from having my children break our tradition," Sarah said, as if pleading with herself. "You know, Joshua, this morning at church time, there was little Mike standing outside the commune gate. Oh, he wasn't running away. It was just boyish foolishness, I suppose. But I saw myself again as I stood once with you, if the sins of the parents are visited on the children. No, it was nothing like that. He was just trying to be smart. But Michael is right. Every generation goes a little farther than the last. Of course, that's inevitable. But I don't want it to be my child. Let someone else start it, let it not be mine. But maybe it will be your child. What you didn't do, little Mike may have the courage to do. Do you remember the Sunday afternoon? We walked back and forth along the commune fence, looking out into the world. We put thoughts into words that I've never forgotten. In every life there is a dream gate through which one ought to go with all his wishes, soon or late, and take the free road where it leads. Sarah's voice was low. Yes, she said, I remember. And if little Mike is thinking about the world and his wishes, that is my fault. Then she added impatiently, there is something else I remember. I was in the commune the night when your parents found a note. I know what they went through. Yes, I know that too, but there can be no growth without pain. There are times when the individual must think of himself. Listen, there is Michael. Yes, Michael. Yes, I am coming. Well, come and hurry, called the voice of Michael Father from the outside doorway. Come, Joshua Volkner. Today you can eat with us. Come and see how it feels to have good solid food instead of the world's fancy dishes. And you can have a glass of wine. That's traditional at a wedding, you remember. The words died away. The house door banged. In the commune yard, the people were merrily inviting one another to the wedding feast. In the parents' bedroom, baby Leah cooed happily. Little Mike lay on the bed, and it seemed to him that the voices he had heard in the outer room were still echoing. Chapter 12. At sundown, Joshua was packing his bags in the teacherage. Little Mike stood in the room near the small paned window. From here he could watch Robert and Joshua as they put their things into the suitcases, and he could also see the automobile standing in the schoolhouse yard. Joey, sitting with Jake on the feather bed, closed his eyes and sniffed the air. Smell it, he said. It's like sticking your nose in the clover patch. That's Elaine's powder, Robert laughed. Hey, Dad, you're spilling it. Elaine should have packed these things herself, Joshua exclaimed. Hurry, Bob, we want to make a few 100 miles tonight. But he gave Robert the powder box. Here, Joey, Robert invited. Hold out your hands. He sprinkled the powder liberally on Joey's palms. Joey sucked the fragrance through his nose. Put it on your face, Jake dared. Joey rubbed it over his cheeks and hair and rolled on the bed in delight. I smell like a skunk, he squealed, only not so stinky. He quieted when men's voices were heard at the door. Don't think this is a bribe, Joshua Volkner answered Michael Newman, entering with a large cardboard carton in both arms. You know it's traditional to show our guests we are glad they came. When visitors were too worldly, Joshua commented good-naturedly, we used to say give them gifts and be glad they're going. What is all this? 2 hams, some hunks of speck, some 3-pound loaves of Utarian bread, and a roll of butter. Here, said the bee-boss, are 2 pails of honey. You'll never get any like this in Chicago. This is number 1 white, purest and clearest in the country. I'm sure you're right about that, Rudolph. And I appreciate the gifts. Thank you, Michael, for your thoughtfulness. It's all good colony stuff, Michael assured him. But as I say, don't think this is done to influence you. If you won't help arrange it so that we may buy the Jordan Ranch, then all I can say is you don't have much love and honor left for your parents and relatives. If I were in your place, believe me, I'd use my influence. I intend to see what can be done, Michael. I'm leaving right now so that I may be at a directors' meeting tomorrow night. The matter will be presented. Trust me for that. but I've been wondering whether you realize that the ranch is a 3,000-acre tract with good buildings and improvements. We know that, interrupted the bee boss. Why do you suppose we have our eyes on it? Well then, you know it runs into considerable money. Big figures don't scare us, Michael said. Besides, Joshua explained, we have drawn up plans for the experimental project. I have a roll of blueprints in the car, and the other day I went over them with some agriculturalists on the Jordan Place. You see, we feel that if we can determine scientifically which crops and seeds are best for this section. Michael flung up his hands. That, he exclaimed, is all foolishness. Hard work and common sense are all the scientific methods that anybody needs. Give us a chance and we'll show you how to operate without blueprints or experts. There's nobody around here who can compete with us the way it is. Why are our brethren having such a hard time in Canada? Because their neighbors are jealous. They say, these Hutterians raise more crops with less machinery and make more money with fewer modern conveniences than we do with all the equipment we've got. They don't want the better things of life. They won't become Canadianized. All they do is work. Since when is it a sin to work? I'd like to know. God said that work was honorable. People say we are expanding too fast. Doesn't the Bible tell us to be fruitful and multiply? We are being criticized for not taking part in war, but the Lord says that whoever takes up the sword will perish by the sword. It amounts to this, because we live according to the gospel and not according to the world. We are being persecuted. America isn't persecuting you, Joshua protested. No, but it is trying to make us a part of its system. Ah, Joshua exclaimed. There you said it, Michael. Little Mike heard his father groan as if someone had marred a piece of his handiwork. But Joshua called to the householder and James the teacher, who were at the door. Come in, gentlemen. Here's a man whom I heartily recommend as an elder. Carpenter Michael has hit the nail on the head. The American way stands at the commune gate, and will force it open. Force it? No, you are already opening it, of your own free will. Don't twist my words, Mr. DeMoss, Michael warned. I said that America is trying to make us a part of its system. I did not say it would succeed. I'll say it for you, Joshua hurried on. All during my visit we have spoken English. Robert found the boys as able to speak it as he. 20 years ago that was unheard of. Soon you will be changing the songs from German into English too. Then the old traditions will be foreign and strange. They are strange already to many of your young people. I see changes everywhere. I noticed a tractor in the shed, and next to it was a combine, a small one, but a combine nonetheless. That's a used one, the householder explained, uneasily, and we don't know whether we'll keep it or not. We haven't tried it out yet. Used or new, Joshua shrugged. It's another trend, another step toward assimilation. Machinery is coming in. The spinning wheels are merely symbols, nothing more. I saw modern tools in the cabinet shop. I noticed factory-made shoes, and there are not as many hooks and eyes as there used to be. Ask my mother about the Canadian colonies. She'll tell you they have running water, electric lights, even milking machines. But no luxuries, James the teacher broke in. Well, that all depends on what you call a luxury. Joshua told him, in one commune they burn gas, in another they have cement sidewalks. Unitarians are beginning to read magazines and secular books. Mother told me that some of the children sing popular songs. Why not admit it? Your young people are looking across the commune borders. Every war brings the world closer. You cannot isolate yourselves any longer. Every world event tells you that what affects the nation affects you. It's a new age, and the fences out there won't hold it back. Through this oration the boys watched the speaker with wonder. No one spoke. Little Mike seemed to feel the shadows pass over him as dusk touched the teacherage with gloom. Michael Father stood with his thumbs latched into the waistband of his black pants. His eyes were troubled and defiant. Stubbornly he said, "At times like this a person feels things that he can't put into words, but he knows that his feelings are right, just the same." James the teacher nodded. "It can be put into words, Michael. A deep conviction is our answer to Joshua Volkner's exaggerated claim. We have been taught not to take seriously any established world order. They all pass away. The kingdom of God is the only reality, and that is here to stay." "Good," cried Michael, driving his fist into his open hand. "That settles the matter. Mike, run and get a match so that Joshua Volkner may get some light on the subject. Let us light the lamp, gentlemen, and drive out some of this darkness." "I have matches," Joshua told him. "I'll light the lamp. But we must be on our way. Robert, you and the boys take the box and the honey and your bag down to the car. Find Elaine and tell her we're ready. Your daughter is over at the Newlyweds," said the householder. "Yes, listen," Michael spoke up. "That's where the singing is coming from. You remember that song, Joshua?" Michael began to sing a verse. "I trust in God for everything, let come what will." "Open the window there, little Mike," his father ordered. "Let's hear these young Unitarians." "Open." Little Mike raised the window of the teacherage. As the voices came in more clearly, Michael sang, "I wait and let God have his way, not mine, in everything." "That, Joshua Volkner," he affirmed, "is what I feel about the matter of the Jordan Ranch. Do what you can for us at the Chicago meeting tomorrow night. Use the influence you have, whatever it may be. But I tell you this, God is looking out for our interest. He knows that our brethren are depending on us, and he'll take care of everything." "Yes," said James the teacher, "and when I listen to those young Unitarians sing, I hear them carrying the songs of the fathers into a new generation. Change, assimilation. Those old fences are still strong, Joshua." The men nodded and were pleased. James the teacher had spoken as if he meant it. Robert instructed the boys. "Okay, Joey, you take the honey. Jake and I'll carry the box. Mike, you bring the suitcase." Joey grabbed the honey pails. "Follow me," he ordered. "Follow the powder face." He led them out, but little Mike was sure that not even Joey's enthusiasm at being the leader could compare with the thrill he felt at carrying Robert's suitcase. The handle was smooth leather, soft to his touch. As he walked, he swung the suitcase freely, but once for a moment he picked it up and held it in both arms. The leather had a rich, pungent smell. "I trust in God for everything, let come what will." Joey was taking them past the home of the newlyweds, where the singing emanated. "There's Elaine," Robert exclaimed as they stopped at the window. They set the box down, but Mike did not let go of the suitcase. Some of the singers were nodding to the rhythm of the song. They sat on the floor and on the bed, while David Weiss took the part of the unsunger. Mothers with babies in their laps occupied the chairs, and women lined the walls. Elaine Volkner was trying to sing along. The hymn throbbed through the dusk, and little Mike, listening, dreamed of raising the harmonica to his lips. He visualized himself standing in the room, playing a new song for the colony and for the visitors from the world. He looked at David and Rachel, their faces bright, sitting on the marriage chest, with their hands entwined. He saw Ruth holding Mary on her lap, and Anna rocking Leah on her knee, in keeping with the music. He heard Rebecca Mueller start the song all over again. "I trust in God for everything, for everything." "Come, Mike, come," Jake was saying. "The powder boss is almost to the car." Not even the suitcase made up for the harmonica. The suitcase was not his, and he had no use for it unless, like Robert, he would be free to come and go. Robert was whistling the song while he walked. Whistling was frowned on by the elders. What if everyone walked around the commune whistling? But there was a spirit of freedom about it. And why not, since Robert would soon be riding through the open gate and out into the adventure of the world. Little Mike would have to go to his room, as always, at the prescribed hour. In the morning he would have to help his father in the cabinet shop, and it might be that he would not even have time to hunt for the harmonica. Jake's voice drifted back to him. "Wouldn't it be fun to go along? Crawl in the box," Robert laughed. "In with the ham and the speck. You'd have plenty to eat." "I wouldn't think about eating," Joey called. "I'd think about sticking out my nose and getting air." "Wouldn't you want to see the big cities too, Joey?" Robert asked. "Or do you just want the smell of them?" "If I did go," Joey said, "how'd I get back? Or should I stay away 20 years? "Someday Joey will make his own automobile," said Jake. "Then we'll all go." Robert opened the trunk. A light went on inside. "Look, Mike," Jake called. "I could lay down in there," Joey figured, peering into the trunk as Robert made room for the box. It was large enough to hold a boy, that was sure. Little Mike figured that it was almost the size of his bench bed. "You can lie right in there," Robert told Joey. "I'll prop up the top and you'll have plenty of air." Joey said, "Guess I'll stay." In the trunk light, Mike saw Jake turn to him. "How easily we could go away," he seemed to be saying. "In just a little while the commune would be far behind." Mike nodded, wondering if Jake guessed what he wanted to reply. "Should we do it, Jake? Would we really have the courage to do something like that? Would you be ready?" "Okay," said Robert. "Let's lift the box in." Jake helped him put it into the trunk. Joey handed him the honey pails. "There's still lots of room," Robert observed. "There's your suitcase," Joey reminded him. "Or does Mike keep that?" "That we'll put in the back seat," Robert explained. "I'll take it, Mike." The suitcase was handed to Robert without comment. He opened the car door and a light flashed on. Joey jumped up and down joyously as Dan Mueller and Paul Weiss came out of the shadows. Come for the big trip, Joey announced. When does it start? Asked Dan. I want to see that. I want to see how the car turns around in the dark, Paul added. Come on in, Robert invited. Look how soft. He bounced up and down on the seat. It's not allowed, Paul said. I guess since we helped bring the things, Jake decided we can go in and see how it feels to sit on the cushions. Hey, Mike, said Robert, you get in front. Behind the wheel, urged Jake. Steer it, yelled Joey. You're the chauffeur, Robert told him. I'll sit back here and tell you where to go. Mike opened the front door and got in. Out goes the light, said Robert. Now no one will see us. Mike closed the door. Jake ran around the car and got in beside him. The others could not resist. They climbed onto the back seat with Robert. Let her go, Robert cried. Chicago car boss, chanted Joey. Step on her, said Robert. Step on her, echoed Dan and Paul. Mike gripped the wheel and stared out into the dark. Once he had pictured Joshua trying to take him out of the commune, and he had trembled at the thought. Now, in make-believe, he was driving through the schoolyard. The gate opened by itself. He was on the outer road. Take it slow, here, loose gravel, Robert called. Stop. Sign driver. Now we're turning on Highway 69. Highway 69, echoed the boys. Okay, the highway's yours, Robert yelled, and the boys on the seat with him repeated his words. Step on it. Yankton coming up. Honk honk. Woo-a-woo. On into Iowa. Now across the Mississippi. Hi, Mississippi. Hi there, Illinois. Stop, we got to pay toll. Honk honk. Watch that traffic driver. Good work. Little more speed. Rrr. They made the motor roar. Rrr. Hey, you've been driving without your lights. Robert reached over the front seat and snapped them on. As they flashed across the commune, Mike shouted, Chicago. Jake was jubilant, and the boys in the back bounced up and down on the seat. But Robert said, How can you go anywhere when Dad has the key? That was not Mike's feeling. It had been a most wonderful ride, and when he stood again on the solid ground of the commune, he was sure that Jake agreed with him. As they walked across the yard, he stayed close to Jake, knowing that this friend understood best what had gone through his mind. Flight would not be too difficult or too terrible. Loud and excited voices lured the boys to the teacherage. Men crowded the entrance, and only Robert was admitted to the room. Go on away, ordered the town man. This is men's business. The words from within were sharp-spoken, deep with emotion, arresting, but Dan and Paul decided to go back and sit near the car. Jake said he was going to join the singers at the Weiss home. Mike went around to the open window of the teacherage. From here he could see his father and Joshua, hemmed in by the 7 elders and other colony men. I know which way the wind is blowing, Michael was saying, calling on everyone to give attention. Men in the world are used to having their palms greased. All right, Mr. DeMoss, how much? That's world language, all right, Joshua agreed. But you have me wrong, Michael. The ethics of the grain business wouldn't allow. Ethics, Michael broke in. Ethics, cried one of the elders. How can there be any ethics in a godless world? Come, come, Michael urged. How much? What do you want to help us get the Jordan Ranch? What's your price?" Joshua's gaze traveled over the circle of bearded faces. As his eyes lingered on each man, he seemed almost to speak each name: Caleb Weiss, Daniel Mueller, Rudolph Kunz, the town man, shoemaker Grable, blacksmith Linder, the elders. "All I can do, gentlemen," Joshua said with finality, "is put the matter up to my associates." "And what does that mean?" asked Elder Weiss. "They'll discuss it and come to some decision. You elders can understand that procedure." "But what are you personally going to say at the meeting?" asked the householder. "I'm not sure you could finance the deal, even if we would sell," Joshua said. "We paid $300,000 for the ranch." The men made a clicking noise. "That's too much," Michael told him. Joshua shrugged. "Then of course," said the householder wryly, "you will want a profit on top of that." "What do you think?" Joshua said shortly. Then he turned from the men to Robert. "Take my suitcase to the car, Bob, and get Elaine." As Robert turned to obey, Joshua continued, "Even without a profit, the ranch is worth a lot of money. I think it's more than you gentlemen can afford." "I told you we've handled big deals before," Michael boasted, and went on to say how Old Portage Colony had financed many communes in the past. Suddenly little Mike heard the voice of Pastor Kunz close to him. "Is there room at the window for one more?" "Surely, Pastor," little Mike said, startled. The old man squinted at him. "What are you up to now, Newman Mike?" "Well, come, there is place here for both of us." Meanwhile Joshua was saying to the men, "If this were happening 50 years ago, even 20 years ago, I would urge my associates to sell you the ranch, and I'd tell you to pay for it as you pleased. For in those days and under those conditions you thrived, but things have changed. This is no longer a world for communistic enterprising." "Why not?" asked the householder. "Because this is an age of self-expression, and that is one thing that communism must always stifle in order to survive. Don't we have self-expression?" Michael wanted to know. "We are free to do as we please. Our children are free. Yesterday Bob wanted to take some of the boys with us to Yankton." "Well, why didn't he?" Michael demanded. "Why didn't the boys come and ask for permission? That is all there is to it." "That is not all there is to it," said Elder Weiss, "and I am glad it isn't. Self-expression, as you call it, Joshua Volkner, has brought the world into the terrible state in which it is today. Discipline is what is needed. Discipline and obedience. Call us old-fashioned, we can show you a way of life, of which we need not be ashamed. There has never been a divorce among the Hutterians. No Hutterian has ever been in jail. None has ever gone to court. If you have forgotten these things, and if the moral standard among us is no longer in your knowledge, I'll refresh your memory." "I haven't forgotten," Joshua answered. "But through the years I've become unusually skeptical of exclusive social concepts, the idea of a special people or a chosen group. Most of them have simply closed their minds and refused to investigate honestly the advantages of the American way. Their leaders have never provided them with a better life than they could have gotten on their own anywhere they chose to live. When I got away from behind these fences, I wondered how many other groups in our country were trying to live under as strict a communal scheme as you practice. None, but I learned this. 150 times someone had the idea that the American system was not good enough, and that the only thing to do was to withdraw from it and live the communal life. Every such attempt failed. Only the Huterian experiment stubbornly persists. Well, gentlemen, that's the story, and I must be going. You've been very kind to me, and I hope I've not been unkind to you." The pastor leaned into the open window. "Just a moment, Joshua Volkner." "Well, Pastor Kunz," Joshua greeted him, "have they crowded you out of this meeting? Come around to the door." "I have nothing to say," remarked the pastor, in a tired voice. "Nothing at all. I only want to reach across from my world to yours and put this book into your hands." Joshua came over and took it without comment. A hymnal of the Huterian Brethren. The pastor was saying, "Long ago a mother brought it to me with the word that her son was gone. His name is written inside. Though the boy has changed, the hymns have not. And I thank God, Joshua Volkner, that there are still other boys with us who do not change." The pastor laid his hand on the shoulder of little Mike. "Our children are our answer to you." The pastor told Joshua, "There is nothing more to say. The weakness of the world is in its low standard of ideals. Our strength in our people and the high principles which we practice. Go your way and let us go ours. I am sorry only that you must travel by night, but perhaps by now you are used to that." Joshua opened the book at the name written on the inside cover. Little Mike watched him with wonder. If the pastor had expected that the hymnal would bring the worldling back to the commune, he was to be disappointed. Joshua was smiling to himself as he turned the pages. Then he raised his eyes and said sincerely, "Thank you very much, Pastor Kunz." He pressed the book in both hands. "Well, I will do what I can in the matter of the Jordan Ranch, but I wish one of you could be there to answer all the questions which the men of the world will be asking me. Come along to Chicago, Pastor Kunz. Maybe you can convince my associates both about your people and your principles." "If they hear not Moses and the prophets," the pastor quoted, "neither will they be persuaded, though one rose from the dead." "That they wouldn't understand," Joshua replied seriously, "but come along." Pastor Kunz shook his head. "I have only one journey to take, and where I am going I will not need to answer questions put to me by men of the world. There everyone will be on my side. Goodbye, Joshua Volkner, and God go with you." He extended his hand to the worldling. Joshua clasped it warmly. "Goodbye, Pastor Kunz." Little Mike turned from the window. There was no sound in the room, or in the commune, no singing, no voices. The picture he carried in his mind grew. Joshua Volkner with the hymnal, Michael Father with a look on his face that was solemn, thought and no feeling of victory at all. The elders with expressions that no one could ever read. The silence was what he remembered and felt, as if God wanted things to be very quiet, so that he might think. Little Mike walked away, feeling almost as if he were Michael Father walking, only that there was nothing sure or confident about his steps, and he had no thought of telling anyone what to do. The car horn sounded. At the schoolhouse the car lights flashed on. Robert Volkner ran past him and went to the teacherage window. "Come on, Dad," he called. "Sis is at the car. We're all ready." The singers who had been at the David Weiss home came out. Men and women left their houses, drawn by the headlights, which Elaine was switching on and off. The boys came running from many directions. Elders and bosses, Michael's father and the men accompanied Joshua through the yard. Little Mike stood in the crowd near the car. Robert caught sight of him. "So long, Mike," he said. "I'll be seeing you. Goodbye, Robert Volkner. I had a swell time. Wish you were coming along. Don't forget. Come if you can." "Goodbye, Joshua Volkner. Goodbye," said the people. Sarah Mother stood with her hands wrapped in her apron. Joshua, shaking hands with almost everyone, came to her and said, "Auf Wiedersehen, Sarah Newman." They did not shake hands, but only to her did he say that. To all the others he said goodbye. Even to his mother, when he held her in his arms, he said goodbye. But he whispered something to her which no one heard. The pastor did not come to the car, but Selma Kunz stood near Martha Volkner, supporting herself on her cane. "Drive carefully," cautioned Selma. "The road is crooked until you get to the highway, so the town man says." "Yes," said the town man, "but after that it is wide and straight. Goodbye, Joshua Volkner, goodbye." Joshua sat in the front seat, and Elaine sat next to him. Robert delighted the boys by curling up in the back seat and pretending he was already asleep. "Look out, everybody," warned the householder. "Watch there, children, get out of the way." The motor started. The sound was accompanied by a cry of delight from the children as they scampered out of the way. "He's going to back up," said the town man. "No, he's going right around the school." "Goodbye, Joshua Volkner," Michael said. "That car needs almost as much room as the colony truck. Say, Sarah, look at Mary there. Mary, come back here." Sarah called and went to bring the child back from where she had gone to follow the car. Andrew Mueller had already run ahead, followed by a long line of children intent on seeing the gate open. Little Mike stood watching. In the white light of the car, Andrew Mueller was a black form that sprang out of nowhere, flung open the gate, and then disappeared. The car went through. The red lights moved quickly into the outer road. The sound of the horn sent a sensation of longing and loneliness into little Mike's soul. Moment by moment, the sound of the motor faded. The bright light loomed a few times far away, and soon it was gone. The gateman came back to the group. "Well," he said, "I wrapped the chain around it good. I guessed that will be the last traveler to go out of here tonight."